Welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for today, Wednesday, March 13th, with Bay Area Radio Hall of Famer and KNBR weekend pregame host, the great Marty Lurie. Marty was born here in New York. He's going to talk today about his journey following the Giants and talk about the 2024 team. And then there's going to be lots of you with many nagging questions about the team. Prior to that, just to fill you in on a few things, next week we'll have Charlie Vassalaro. Charlie will be describing the history of the Giants in spring training. And then we have Roger Munter the following week. We'll be talking about all of the Giants, the farm system. So a lot to look forward to as we celebrate opening day, which is in 2 weeks. So just one last thing before I turn it over to Marty. Again, let's try to follow the rules here. Don't interrupt people from talking, and when they're done, whoever has their hand up, I'm going to call on them next. Let's try to have some decorum in here. So without any further ado, love to introduce Marty Lurie. Marty, welcome to the New York Giants Preservation Society. Marty Lurie.
Pleasure. It really is a pleasure being here. And it was wonderful meeting you guys and seeing Steve at games down here in Arizona. And you do a wonderful job, really, every week. It's fabulous what you do. So I'm happy to be here.
There's nothing unusual about that.
Could we please turn off anybody else who has their issue? Marty, why don't you first tell us about your journey from New York to San Francisco, your current job with the Giants, and then there's going to be loads of questions about the team.
All right. Well, my story is a little bit different than many people's story. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Yes, Brooklyn, New York, February 1st, 1946. So I tell people it was the great era of New York baseball. And for me, growing up, baseball was always my unconditional friend. And my story kind of begins, my father passed away in 1950, and I was only 4. And baseball filled that void in my life, giving me something to follow, heroes. I had an uncle, Abe, who introduced me to baseball cards and stickball in the schoolyard and the Spalding and the games we played in Brooklyn, stoop ball and, throw the ball and hit the point of the stoop and, we'd go back and King and Queen and all those games that we loved. So I was a real Brooklyn kid. And that was how I grew up. Brooklyn, for me, was playing games in the street and following the Brooklyn Dodgers because I was in Brooklyn. And it's funny to listen to some of the reactions tonight from my story. I lived on East 37th Street next to Church Avenue and Linden Boulevard near Kings County Hospital. And I would go to Ebbets Field as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, and a little bit as a 10-year-old before moving to Miami Beach in September of 1956. So my connection to New York baseball really was in that period of time. And it was terrific. And it's funny to listen to with the one reaction about being a New York Giant fan in Brooklyn. We weren't Giant fans. We were Dodger fans. Now, my mother has subsequently told me, and I was so little at the time, that my father was a Giants fan, which of course I was too little to understand that. But she told me he was a Giants fan. But for me, it was Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese and Duke Snider. And it was the Brooklyn Dodgers. And I tell people, if we had a Giant fan, and in those days you had the duplexes, so we had the house, the apartment or house, whatever you want to call it, on the bottom. Then up the stairs was another house above us. And those were Giant fans. We didn't talk to them. You didn't talk to the people down the block. And a Yankee fan, forget it. You didn't even bother with a Yankee fan in Brooklyn in those days. And that's how regional it was, and it was strong. I mean, it was right. That's the way we were. So for me, going to Ebbets Field really was magic. It was that I had that experience like everyone here has had, that first time you go to a ballpark and you open that door and you look out and there's the green grass. And look, in those days, we didn't have color TV. So to go to a ballpark, it all came to life for me, to see the white uniform. And even today, I tell people, I'll jump ahead to, what I do today. And of course, I've been in baseball here since 1996. When I go and see the Dodgers at home and see that number under the heart, I feel there's a twinge that happens to me, that I am brought back to being 8 years old and 9 years old. And that's the beauty of baseball. So again, jumping ahead, I've had a wonderful relationship with Willie Mays. And Willie has chosen me to be his interviewer, which we've done about a half a dozen shows together in Scottsdale. We did a Coca-Cola in Atlanta, in San Francisco. And what happens is he signs a ball, you get a picture with him, and then for an hour, he and I just talk baseball in front of the crowd. And he's such a showman. It was fabulous. But for me to be chosen to do that, the kid from Brooklyn in Ebbets Field, and I'll tell you how Willie and I got our relationship going, but for me to be chosen is one of those unbelievable stories. How did that happen? No one saw that coming. But the moment that I'll always remember is Mother's Day of 1956. And in those days, you could get 2 tickets to a game if you opened a savings account at Lincoln Savings Bank, or you got the Elsie's board and, the lids, and you could turn that in and get a couple of tickets. So I took my mother to the game on May 7th, 15th, 17th, 1956. And who are the Dodgers playing? The Giants. And that was a day that Carl Erskine threw the no-hitter against the Giants. And I remember going, and my sisters tell me the story that I told my mother. My mother said, "We got to leave. It's the 7th inning." And I said, "Ma, Erskine's pitching a no-hitter." And, obviously we stayed at the game. But I've talked to Willie about that. I said, "Willie, I was there, when, you got no hit." He said, "No, we got a hit." I said, "You didn't get a hit. The only thing that came close to a hit, I think Whitey Lockman hit one down the line that almost fell in. That was the only potential hit." So that was kind of my Brooklyn story with baseball. Meeting during a doubleheader, I tried to get Vince Scully's autograph, and he walked away from me. And even in all these years of doing broadcasting, he's the one guy that intimidated me, that I have trouble asking him for anything, although I did interview him. So that was me, Brooklyn and baseball. But life changed for me in like 1954, 55, because for some reason I liked birds and I liked the Orioles. And the St. Louis Browns had moved to Baltimore in 1954. And I saw a game on TV between the Orioles and the Yankees, and I liked the hat. And for the rest of my time, right up until the time I got into baseball in 1996, I was an Oriole fan. And that's what I really enjoyed. I used to go to games in Miami Stadium. I never went to see a game in Baltimore, although I did get to Camden Yards and never got to Memorial Stadium. So baseball was my friend. And we moved to Miami Beach in September of 1956. We left Brooklyn, and I ended up in Miami Beach. My baseball story continues along the way. I read the sporting news. You can't see it here, but in the garage, I've got every sporting news from like 1946 to 1978. And that was the Bible of baseball. And that's how I learned what baseball was all about and the beauty of the game. Baseball journeyed with me through high school, through college at the University of Florida, and through law school at the University of Miami. I played softball my whole life, but I loved listening to games on the radio. And as a kid, I used to listen to games on Armed Forces Radio. I had a big radio and we could tune into Armed Forces Radio. And believe it or not, I tell this to people, it was May of 1958. I heard Stan Musial's 3000th hit. He got it. And I heard it. I was home from school that day. And I listened my whole life. The best thing I ever got was a satellite dish so I could watch games all the time and hear the broadcasters and everything else. So to fast forward a little bit, I had a legal career of 25 years. I started my own law practice with a friend in Miami, in the underserved area of Miami. And we opened up a storefront law office in 1970 when it was cool to do it. And we were going to fight Nixon and Haldeman and Ehrlichman and John Mitchell, the pipe, and Martha Mitchell and all that. We were going to save America. So we had that law practice. And then we took both bars, the California bar and the Florida bar, passed both. And eventually we moved the law practice to San Francisco. And that's when my connection to the Giants really started in 72. And that's when I went to games, the 70s with Ron Bryan and Montefusco. And I've met all these people, Halicki and Gary Thomason and Gary Matthews and Maddox and Dave Rader and Kingman and the whole crowd of them. My connection to Giants baseball really started in 72. So I practiced criminal law and I did 100 homicides, 3 capital cases, beginning to end, 1,000 drunk drivings and all this stuff. And I was a people's lawyer. And I did it for 25 years and burnt out. Along the way, and I slow pitch softball in the Bay Area from 1975 to 2008. But along the way, I ended up pitching for a team that had Corey Bush and Mike Shapiro and Mark Montgomery and Kevin Skillings. And these names you probably don't know, but Corey you probably know. And they started what was then known as Giants Vision. And that was, they would put 40 games from Candlestick on pay TV. And they would have that as part of the programming. So because they knew I loved baseball, baseball cards, baseball, it was Marty Lurie. Judges used to call me in chambers and say, what do you think of this? And they'd be telling me stories about the old San Francisco Seals. I'd be doing an arraignment and they'd say, are you related to Bob Lurie? And I'm standing there with a guy who's accused of a homicide. And I'd say we're 3 billion apart. So they knew I loved baseball. And they asked me to come out to Candlestick and program the board with little tidbits about the players. And so when they would come up, it would say Gary Mintz grew up in New Jersey, hit 372 for the Trenton Giants, then moved on to Newark and hit such and such, and that kind of stuff. So we'd do hero notes for the players. So I did that. I go leave court in my suit, and I'd come out to Candlestick, and I would program the board. That's what I would end up doing. And I brought the judges with me. Ed Stern, I love, who I wish was here today. He would love this. He's a New York Giant fan that goes back to the Polo Grounds. He saw Carl Hubble. He saw the All-Star game. He saw Hubble strike out Cronin and Fox and Simmons and Ruth and Gehrig. And on my website, loveofthegameproductions.com, and I have my interview with Ed. It's about a half hour, but Ed talks about the New York Giants and being there and all that. So Ed would come with me, the Superior Court judge. We'd end up being in court, and then we'd leave and go to Candlestick. So I did that, and I had to stop because I had a capital case, and the judge said, look, we're going to set it for trial. I said, you can't set it in the summer. I'm doing baseball. And he said, really? Are you a lawyer or are you in baseball? I said, I'm a lawyer. So I stopped. So 1995, I did another very difficult homicide case and didn't really bounce back. And there was sort of like an O.J. Simpson case, and ended up at that point leaving law. And people said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I had an accounting degree. I was a lawyer in my own practice. And someone said, you love baseball. Why don't you do baseball on the radio? I said, really? I said, yeah, you can go to a little station in El Cerrito where my son went to high school. They have a teaching radio station. Why don't you go in there and tell me you want to do a show? I said, okay. So I went in there in January of 1996, so a year after leaving law. And I said to the teacher, Philip Morgan, Phil, I'd like to try a show. He said, come on in Wednesday at 10 o'clock. There's no students. We take the feed from Long Beach and Jazz, and you can be on the radio. I'd never been on the radio in my life. So I go in there and I bring in magazines and books. I figured I have to read the league leaders from 1957. How am I going to talk for a half hour? And then I realized I was a lawyer. I could talk forever about nothing. And that's what I did. People liked it. And I could connect the dots. I could talk about Johnny Mize in 1947. I could talk about Jack Lorkey. And I could talk about Tim Lincecum. And I could connect the dots. I'm sorry?
Nothing, you
That's
just said my dad.
Yeah, well, we've met, or I met someone
Yeah.
from your family.
Yeah.
And I did that story a couple of years ago. And I
Yeah.
have the book, the Jack Lorkey book. You know that. I have the
Yes. Thank you.
So I love that story. You know, I know that story quite well. So I ended up being part of Giants Vision. And now I'm creating this little show in this little radio station. And it took off. People liked it because I could connect the dots of baseball. And to tell you the truth, I could say it to you guys, I brought New York baseball to San Francisco. The passion of the baseball cards and the emotion in my face and my voice of talking about baseball. This is me. I'm New York. I'm you. This is what I bring to the table. And it worked. And I did a pregame for the A's from how I started on air, 1998. I was at the A's game and I was doing this little show still on KECG. And in those days, the A's had two stations. One took the signal from Walnut Creek to Lake Tahoe. The other one took the signal from San Francisco to San Jose. And the fellow from the Walnut Creek station was the manager, general manager, and he loved the Red Sox. And he was a little older than me, and all he wanted to do was talk about the Red Sox from 1948. And I'd say, well, you mean, Bobby Doerr and Johnny Pesky and Boo Ferris and Tex Houston, Ellis Kinder, and, and Dom DiMaggio. And now I'm going through all the names to Bertie Tebbetts and to all this stuff. And he goes, gee, you know a lot about baseball. Why don't you come to my station and do a show? I said, how am I ever going to do that? And he says, don't worry. I'll give you 20 minutes to lead into the A's game. You pay me $20 and I'll put you on the air. I said, wow, okay. I'll try that. And then he said, and I'll tell you something else. You can sell an ad. I said, really? I said, yeah, I'm going to charge you $20, sell an ad to a furniture company for $50 and you'll make $30.
Ah,
I was back. I'm back. Marty Lurie is back in business. And I have an accounting degree from the University of Florida. I have the law degree. I had my own law practice. I did this practice for so many years. And now I'm doing this. And I'm realizing, hey, I could do this and make a little living doing it. So the show went from 20 minutes to an hour to 90 minutes. The A's changed stations every other day. And I had to renegotiate my deal with new stations who didn't know me. I've never been employed by anybody in baseball, right to today. These shows are all me, right? With KNBR and everything else, it's all me. So now instead of paying $20 a show, I'm paying $600 a show, paying like $100,000, but I sold the ads and covered the time. And one thing led to another. And I did it every day. I did a pregame show. And I did a show called Memories of the Game with the favorite baseball stories. 300 of those are in Cooperstown. I did probably 1,800 of them. And it was like yourself. I'd have people like yourself on, or managers, umpires, players. It didn't matter. But you tell me your favorite baseball memory. And everybody has a story. So I must have done 1,800 of them. They're all archived. Many of them are on loveofthegameproductions.com. So I did that. And I was getting a little well-known. The A's were not covered very well, but there I was learning and being part of it. And Larry Baer in 2009 said to me, gee, we have people coming from all over California, Oregon, Nevada. They're driving in. We only have a 1-hour pregame show and a 1-hour postgame show. How would you like to come over and add to that coverage? Are you a free agent? And I said, where do I sign? I said, I am a free agent. These are all my shows. And in 2010, Larry Baer and Lee Hammer at KNBR worked it out where I could come over and do a 1-hour pregame and a 1-hour postgame after the person they had, before and after the person they had. So I come over, and it's 2010, and this is post steroids, and I'm on the air, and again, I'm bringing me, Marty Lurie, the kid from Brooklyn, to talk baseball. And people, again, responded to it. And then I realized about July, I said, you know something? They can win. They can win. They've got Matt Cain, they've got Lincecum, they've got pitching, and they've got some decent hitting. They got a bullpen. They can actually win. So I got on the soapbox and said, they can win. And we go through the summer, and they had the horrible August, and Lincecum was miserable, and he had to be talked to by, I forget the guy in Houston, I forget. The pitcher for the Astros talked to him, and somehow he turned it around, and now they're about 10 games behind the Padres. I said, don't worry. The Padres aren't that good. And all of a sudden September happens, and they're starting to win, and they're creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And it gets to the last weekend, and Zito gets blasted. Matt Cain loses, and it comes down to Sunday to play the Padres, and it's
Jonathan Sanchez.
no, I know that one, but for the Padres, was it? I forget his name. The pitcher, the right-hander who they hated.
Yeah, he
Was
gave
it-
Latos.
Latos, very good. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, thank you. So it's Latos and Sanchez, and Posey hits a home run, and Sanchez hits a triple, and blah, blah, blah. And they end up beating the Padres, and they win. And I'm on the air now. The post game is now from 7 o'clock till midnight. I'm taking calls from all over California, and this is really before the internet really, everything was streaming. So I'm taking calls. If you listen to my post game, if you left the game, I could take you from San Francisco to Bakersfield. That's how long I would be on. Larry Baer would go to a hockey game. He'd go out to dinner, go to a hockey game, and on the way home, I'd still be on. And that's what 2010 was turning into. So, look, it's a long season, and I was on a lot, and it's taking off, and I get tired. And I said, all right, they're playing the Braves. This has been fun. It's been a long season. They were great. This has been terrific. It's probably time for me to go home. Well, they get into the Braves series, and thank God for Brooks Conrad, and makes the errors, and Lincecum pitches probably one of the best playoff games I've ever seen in my life. Lincecum was a kid the parents dropped him off at Little League and said, all right, we'll pick you up in an hour and a half. And then he'd just go out and pitch, and the parents would pick him up. That's Lincecum. And he beat the Braves that first game. I think he struck out 14 or something, and pitched a great game. And kind of Hinsky hit the home run against the Giants, but then they came back and they win that one. And now they play the Phillies, and the Phillies had all the pitching, but now Cody Ross gets going, and if it was a prize fight, they hit the Phillies in the mouth in the first round, the first game, and they knocked them out, and the Phillies never recovered. And Bochy figured it out with his left-handed relief pitching, that he could stop Rollins, stop Ryan Howard, Utley, whatever the Phillies had, those lefties, if it was Affeldt, Lopez, they would come in and shut it down. And they shut the Phillies down and beat them. They said, all right, that's enough. I'll go home. Okay, that's enough. So now it comes to Texas. And Greg Papa, who we love, says he's on TV doing the pregame. And he says, it's Cliff Lee. He's the greatest postseason pitcher who ever pitched in baseball. And I said, come on, Greg, let's see what happens here. So he gets into the first game, and Freddie Sanchez with 2 doubles and just whacked him around, knocked Cliff Lee out. Vlad had trouble in right field. He couldn't play right field at Oracle. And the Giants get ahead and they go down to Texas. And of course, Renteria, Uribe have the big home runs and they end up winning the World Series. So now they've won the World Series and now it's time for, they don't like to jinx it by saying the P word, which is parade. But finally, it's going to be a parade. And KNBR has this big float. And they asked me to be on the float to broadcast what is going on in the parade to the world. So the story, the kid from Ebbets Field in Brooklyn,
I love it.
who didn't like the Giants at all and saw the no-hitter and lived in East 37th Street in Brooklyn, is now talking to the world about how the New York Giants, now the San Francisco Giants, have won their first World Series since 1954. And I'm the guy on the float telling that story.
Wow.
It was crazy. And here I am going down Market Street, Montgomery Street, the same route that the Giants took in 1958 when they first came to San Francisco and the open cars and all that. And I'm on the float and we have the speeches and everything else. And then I finally got to go home. That was it. I finally got to go home. So it was a long journey, but that was 2010. So now it's 2011. And one of the radio guys in San Francisco is Gary Radnich, a wonderful man. He was very supportive of me and a little bit old. I know he's younger than me, but he was a veteran. And he kept saying on the air for all of 2011, they brought the PA announcer. You probably had Renelle, right? Renelle on this show here, Renelle Brooks Moon. She's the PA announcer for the Giants. Why does she get a World Series ring and Marty Lurie didn't? Marty Lurie was on the air more than anybody. Marty Lurie was this and that. So he pounds this thing all year long. So we get to the end of 2011. It's a miserable season. Posey gets hurt, the whole shebang, Carlos Beltran and everything else. And we get to the end of 2011 and we're doing a show in front of the ballpark and Gary Radnich is on with me and Larry Baer. And he starts in again with Larry Baer. Why doesn't he have a World Series ring? Why doesn't he have a World Series ring? Larry Baer says, well, let's see what we can do. I said, fine, thank you very much for the recognition. I'd never gotten recognition really from any, look, I was a criminal lawyer. Nobody ever called up and said, gee, you did a good job. You got that guy, lesser sentence, nice work. Nobody ever called up and said that. The A's were so ridiculous. They were changing stations all the time. They could care less about me, although I worked so hard. And this was the first time anyone really wanted to recognize me in my whole life, you know, and it was interesting. So the next day I get an email from Larry Baer's secretary, Terry Guess, and she says, what's your ring size? I said, this is a good sign. This is good circumstantial evidence. So I said, well, 11 and a half, something like that. And that's the last I heard of it. So now we're in 2012. I'm doing the shows and I don't hear a word, nothing. So I said, all right, you know, they said that and whatever. So it's June of 2012. And I get a phone call, a text, whatever I got in those days from Terry. She says, be in Larry Baer's suite tonight at 6 o'clock on a Friday night. So I said, all right, I go up there and I open the door. He's behind his desk and I see on his desk there a Tiffany box. This is another good sign. This is a very good sign. This is good circumstantial evidence. So he says, we want to commend you. And he said many, many, many nice things about me and what I had done and galvanized the fan base and all this kind of stuff. And he said, we want to give you a World Series ring. And it was very emotional for me because I said that this has never happened. And tonight I have it right here. And
Wow.
that's the 2010 ring. I'll bring it a little closer.
That's beautiful.
See it, and my name is on the side, and the World Series trophies on the other side, and inside you can't see it, but it's got the 3 series and what happened. So I got I get the World Series ring, and they win in 2012. And I won't go through the whole story, but I become the psychiatrist for the fans because Cincinnati, as I use a word that we use in schmeiced them in the first 2 games. And the Sunday night game was 9-0 and they lose. And Krishna Royal throws a shutout. And I get on the air and said, don't worry. It just takes one game, one inning, one moment to turn a short series around. And sure enough, they go to Cincinnati and they have that amazing game where Roland makes the error late in the game and they're almost no hit by Homer Bailey. Pence hits the ball 3 times and they end up winning the game in 10 innings and they win that game. They come back the next day and win. And then they hit the home run. Posey hits the slam off Latos in the 5th game and they beat the Reds. Then they go down 3-1 to the Cardinals and Zito pitches the great game and they end up beating the Cardinals at home. And I say to Brian Sabian, you used up all your pitchers. The Tigers are coming in. All you have left is Zito and Madison Bumgarner. That's it. And he says, don't worry. I said, okay. And the first World Series game in 2012, Pablo hits 3 home runs. Still, of all the games I've seen and all the things I've done in my life, I've never seen a game like Sandoval had with 3 home runs in the World Series. It was just unbelievable. And Verlander couldn't believe it. And basically they did to Detroit what they did to the Phillies. They just knocked them out. And that was the end of that. So we go, here we are again. Now I'm back to the parade and I'm back on the float. And this time Mario Alioto says to me, next, you should have really have a car in this parade. I said, well, thank you very much. But, I'm on the float again, talking about the parade, the million people talking. And it comes into 2012. Long story short, they tell me this time over the winter, you're going to get a ring. Now, this ring is wonderful. It doesn't have as many diamonds as the players' ring. And then there's a second level for the executives. And then there's a third level. So I said, I don't say it out loud, but I'd like to maybe get the second level, with a few more diamonds. So they bring me up in June to one of the suites, and there's Orlando Cepeda, who's a dear friend. He's up there, Russ Stanley, Mario Alioto, Larry Baer, and all these people. They make a speech, and they bring out the Tiffany box. And I open it up, and there's the big ring. So that one's in the bank. And I have a third ring from 2014. But in 2014, they end up beating Kansas City in 7 games. It was a tough series. And the 6th game, remember, they got beat 10-0. And I said, don't worry, Bumgarner's around. Let's see how they use him. And I was on TV after the 6th game. So they end up winning. And I go to the parade and Mario said, well, things are so hectic. Things happen at the last second. We can't really give you a car. And I said, okay, no problem. I bring my whole family to the parade. And I look, and there's a car from Marichal, Mays, McCovey, Perry, Barry Bonds. And I get to the next car, and it's Marty Lurie. And I couldn't believe it. So for 2014, I had a car in the parade. And there I am going down Market Street, people are yelling, it's a mosaic, he can hit, it's a long season, all these things that I said for so many years. And then I got the 2014 ring, which was the big ring again. And the kid from Brooklyn. And then Willie and I, the last story I'll tell you, Willie and I would talk in spring training all the time. And again, sometimes it's good to be old. And he would test me all the time. And he'd ask me about Alvin Dark and about Wes Westrum and about, Darryl Spencer and Ray Cott and, all these names. Nobody knows except me. No one knows anything. So he says, all right, give me the 56 Cincinnati Reds. I said, all right, you got Ted Kluszewski, Johnny Temple, Roy McMillan, Frank Robinson, you got Gus Bell, Wally Post, Ed Bailey. He says, yeah, but who played third? Because that person eventually became a Giant. And I said, Ray Jablonski. And when I said that, Willie, for some reason, changed. He knew I knew, and I knew that he knew that I knew. And we became fast friends after that. And he trusted me. And we would do these shows, and he'd say, can't you ask better questions than that? You're a lawyer. And I'd say, look, you had the catch in 1954. We all knew it. You milked this thing for 60 years. I knew you had it. Monty Irvin knew you had it. You know, you've been milking this thing for 60 years. So we would tease each other back and forth and became, come on, to have dinner with Willie and be around Willie and be in the clubhouse with Willie, Gary, like you, and, you know, you saw when you came to Oracle, was a highlight of my life. I mean, you know, who would have thought? Again, I'll say it, the kid from Ebbets Field ends up being the person who is part of what the Giants sell to the public. But it's all me. I've never been employed by the Giants. I've never been employed by a radio station. I get the time, I sell the time, I produce the show, I get the guests, and I've been doing, this is my 29th year of doing it. And that's my story. That's basically my story.
Marty, that's a great story. And thanks for reliving the parades, because there hasn't been much to cheer about the last few years. So
No.
we can open up for questions. I have one announcing question, and then I'll ask a question about the present day team. Did anybody on the A's broadcasting unit or the Giants, when you went to them, 2010, couldn't have picked a better year, anybody help you,
Yes, a great question. Thank you. Bill King with the A's was wonderful to me. And Bill, of course, I love digging into the stories of baseball, and a story about Burley Grimes or, you know, something like that. Bill loved it. And he listened to everything I did and validated, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to do an interview in a clubhouse. I didn't know where to stand, where to sit. I didn't know anything. Bill validated me. And Ken Korak and Bill with the A's were fabulous to me, fabulous. And then with the Giants, John Miller has been wonderful. Dwayne and I, believe it or not, in '87, I was in the booth. I graduated to being in the booth with Dwayne and Joe Morgan, giving them little notes about, you know, what this pinch hitter would do, what Harry Spillman would do, or Joel Youngblood would do. So Dwayne was very good to me, but John Miller has always treated me, which is hard for me to believe, as somewhat of an equal. And yeah, that's a good question. But those I would point out specifically. Dwayne, Mike has been terrific. Mike loves my interviews and commends me all the time. It's good, you know, again, I'm not employed by these folks, so to get validation from them is very big in my world for me.
That's wonderful. My one question, I'm sure that everybody has a lot of questions, but for now, I'm very happy with the managerial staff and the coaching staff that has been hired for this year. My biggest gripe, though, is I feel like we were sold on certain guys, and I know they're young: Matos, Schmidt, Luciano, and Farhan has been on the job for 5 or 6 years now. And these three guys, none of them appears to be making the team this year. I'm not understanding.
Well, they're not, look, it's still San Francisco. He cleared house last year of all the trades he moved, except for Conforto. And you bring up Casey Schmidt, you know, they bring up people early and they give him a chance, and Schmidt got hot, then he cooled off, and they lose confidence in him. So they don't have confidence in him. Joey Bart, the same thing. They pushed him up to the big leagues early. Luciano's interesting because Farhan did say he's the shortstop. And to say he's the shortstop, and now today, March the 13th, to say he's not the shortstop. He's going to go to Sacramento. He's going to get a new position. He's not the shortstop. That's a product of Bob Melvin. And Melvin saying, I want good infield defense. So they're not patient with these people. I think Matos is going to be a player. He's only 22. He's got good bat to ball skills. He did not play well defensively. It probably wouldn't hurt him. He'll probably end up, because of the roster situation, of being in Sacramento. But these are players, you're right. They have not developed. And until you get those 4 or 5 guys from your farm system, like a Logan Webb, look at Taylor Rogers, you know, Tyler Rogers, I mean, whichever one you want to pick, he came from the farm system as well. But, you know, you look at Wade trade, Flores trade, Estrada trade, Ahmed, trade. Fitzgerald's from the farm system. He's going to play. Chapman, free agent. Conforto, free agent. Lee, free agent. Slater from the farm system. He murders lefties. He will be there. Yastrzemski, trade. Murphy, trade, free agent. Bailey, farm system. Bart, farm system. But who's the star? Where's the core guy? And that's what we're waiting to see. And that's been the failure of Farhan, really, is to develop those core players. Then you add around them. But when you try to build a team from free agency, it's very, very hard to do it. Very hard.
Honestly, how much longer you give him?
Farhan?
Yeah.
Well, they love his analytics. And Greg Johnson is the spokesperson for the team now. And Melvin said, look, I'm not coming here unless Farhan gets 2 more years, to get a 3-year deal like I got, because I know the drill. I'm here for 3 years. We don't have a good year. You bring in a new general manager, director of baseball operations. He wants Wes Westrom to be the manager. I'm out. So Melvin wasn't coming here without Farhan getting extended. And so he's extended, but if God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen. If they, win 67 games or have some crazy, terrible season, the attendance will be down tremendously, and it could jeopardize his job, even with the extra 2 years. I'd say he's on the clock, as they like to say. He's on the clock.
Thank you, Marty. And for those listening, Dylan Cease was traded to the Padres. Anybody?
The Padres fan?
Yes.
I wanted Dylan Cease. I thought Cease would make a difference because he's here this year and next year, and he's a quality right-hander. But he didn't want to make a move because they're pushing Cobb back. You see, Cobb has got the hip injury, but he's throwing better. They've got him. He's supposed to be in a minor league game this weekend. The doctors are, with their fingers crossed, praying that nothing happens to him. But they figure Cobb is back. Keaton Wynn will pitch a little bit before they leave spring training. And that'll be your 4. And the 5th guy will be Mason Black or something like that. But yeah, I wanted Snell. I wanted Cease. Anybody. Just give me one more arm. One more arm. And I think, because I love Harrison. And what I saw of Hicks Saturday, look, he's a project, but when he pitched Saturday against the A's, and wasn't a great A's team, he commanded that off-speed stuff. And this guy throws 98 and then throws 84. You're not going to touch him. So the pitching's horrible, but I would have liked to see, so Cease to the Padres. It's funny, I had a conversation today on the rail with Ryan Christensen today, who I know from the A's days. I remember when he came up as a rookie with the A's in 98, 99. Now he's the bench coach. I said, Ryan, what about the Padres? Because he was there last year. I wanted to get his feel. He said, they're going to be tough. He said, look, but they got Darvish. He's 38, throws 1 million pitches. Musgrove, not clear if he's completely healthy. Then who knows what they'll do? Well, you just answered that question. Yeah, Padres got a pitcher.
Thank you, Marty. Mars, you're up. Unmute, Mars.
Marty, thank you so much for joining us. You brought back so many memories from my childhood. I'd like to start off by talking about the New York street games. I played them all. I just loved it. I grew up in Inwood Hill, just a stone's throw from the Polo Grounds. So I went to a lot of New York Giant games. The first one I was taken to by my parents was in 1949. I was born in 1947. And I have to tell you a little story. My mother's aunt and uncle were college professors, and they had 3 children. That the twin boys were doctors, and the girl was a dental hygienist. And when we went to visit them in Brooklyn, we had to take 3 trains on a Sunday to get to Brooklyn. And when we got there, my pop realized, a blue collar guy, that he couldn't really have a conversation with my mother's aunt and uncle. So he had tickets for Ebbets Field, where the Dodgers were playing the Cardinals. And in that game, Stan Musial hit 5 doubles. It was the only time I was in Ebbets Field. That that was incredible. And I want to also mention that I went to the last Giant Dodger game that was played in New York on my 10th birthday in 1957, where Mays hit 2 triples. The Dodgers had a 2-0 lead on Drysdale walked in the second inning and Gilliam hit a 2-run homer. But the ball before the 2-run homer went off my pop's fingertips in the upper
Huh.
deck down the right field line. And then the next one was a home run. They took a 2-0 lead into the 4th inning, where Mays and I think Jablonski got on base, and Hank Sauer hit a 3-run homer. It was Kurt Barkley against Drysdale. The Giants won 3-2. We didn't go to the last game against Pittsburgh. I watched it on TV, and I was pretty much really sickened when they moved. And so here I am today, and you brought back all these memories that are really heartfelt for me. Between thinking about the New York street games, I played them all: stoop ball, Johnny and the Pony, handball, all those games. But I wanted to ask you. You mentioned about Ebbets Field and your family background of your father being a Giants fan and your mom being a Dodger fan. Did you ever go to the Polo Grounds to see the Giants? And
Never. No, we never left. For us to leave Brooklyn, we'd go to Madison Square Garden to see the circus and get a little turtle and bring a turtle home. That's what we did, and have cotton candy and get sick. Or we went to May's department store to buy some clothing. We never went anywhere. I mean, to go, because I had no way to do it. The Ebbets Field, you get on the trolley, you go to Rogers Avenue, you get off Rogers Avenue, and I guess we must have taken another bus to Ebbets Field, and you were there. But to go to the Polo Grounds, I might as well have been going to Minnesota or Yankees.
right.
There was no way in the world I had the ability to go anywhere, because you just didn't do that as a kid.
When we went to visit my aunt and uncle in Brooklyn, my mother's aunt and uncle, and their 3 kids, like that, we had to take 3 trains because the subway service was cut down on Sundays. So, it seemed like it was going to, like you were just saying, like going to Minnesota. That's what it was like. But in that doubleheader, when the Cardinals played the Dodgers, the only time I was in Ebbets Field, and of course they would play the Giants also in that series, either before or after Brooklyn. We watched Stan Musial hit 5 doubles to all fields, and so he was the greatest National League hitter. And of course, Willie Mays was always my favorite player. I got his autograph on the field in 1955 after the Giants won a game, and he was running to center field. And I ran out away from my pop to get his autograph on this book that I had called by Arnold Hanno, Born to Play Ball. And I still have that book. And when I went to the Moscone Center for the baseball card convention, somebody offered me $3,000 for that and the Giants yearbook of 1955. And I turned it down because I kept it as a memento, and I still have it. Thank
Yeah,
you
I got
so
to
much for joining us.
Those are
Thank you,
good.
Morris.
I met Arnold Haino, by the way, and he loved Willie, and he did, of course, the story about 1954, a day in the bleachers. Wonderful man, wonderful man.
Judge Jim, you are up.
Thank you. Marty, first of all, I'm kicking myself. I did a career of criminal law, and it never dawned on me I could have just quit and did a radio show about the Giants. I think I would have.
Skills transfer,
Yeah,
believe me. They transfer.
But I wanted to tell you, the first time I heard your name, it was in 2010. Ash Khan started the Don't Stop Believin' song. And he had a
Marty Lurie.
shout out to Marty Lurie. And I'm saying, I know everything about the Giants, I thought. And I said, I had to look it up back then and say, oh, that's so that he did a radio show back there. But that was the first time I heard your name, was when that became the anthem of 2010.
I was his Little League coach.
Ah, okay. But he shouted out to you in 10.
I
Yeah.
love it. Marty
Yeah.
Lurie.
Yeah, and there 2010, just so many good memories about that. It was so good to see it come together, and I'm glad to hear that you were one of the guys just saying it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I went down to Atlanta for the playoff series, and I was there when they knocked out Atlanta, and real classy the way they handled Bobby Cox's last game. The Giants stopped their celebration and applauded Bobby Cox. I thought that was classy. And then I went down to Texas for Bumgarner's first game in the World Series, and it was just a magical year, and I just love hearing you chat about that. So
Yeah.
it's really special.
Yeah.
Were you in Atlanta or Texas for any of those
No.
games?
No, I stayed back and did the shows at the ballpark.
Okay.
The pregame and the postgame from the ballpark. In those days, when they won in 2010, FP Santangelo, I did the postgame together after they won the World Series. And of course, he's a former player. For him, it was like really a big deal. And he
Yeah.
left me alone in the bunker, we call it, at Oracle Park, and he disappeared. And he was on the mound drinking champagne. And I'm taking calls from people about how it's the first time they won, and for their grandfather and great grandfather and their parakeet and their dog and all the other stuff. And he disappeared on me. That's what I remember about the last game of 2010.
Well, what a special year, and I'm glad to hear you were pumping them up the whole year. Good to hear. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Judge. Mr. Norm Coleman.
Marty, first, I just want to thank you for being here. I loved the stories you told today, and I love listening to you on the radio. And I do quite often. I'm local Bay Area, and I also wanted to thank you because you were kind enough one time to give me your autograph outside the bunker. And so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I've got two questions for you. The first one's asking you to put on your legal hat for a second. And that is J.D. Davis is big in the news right now. And there is one provision in the collective bargaining agreement that says something about failure to exhibit sufficient skill or competitive ability. And
Right.
that means that he can get prorated salary. But I'm wondering, some people are talking about the union filing a grievance. What do you think about that? Do you think that they will? And if they do you think they could win?
I think they will, and I think they will based on that one issue that you brought up, that you just can't get rid of a guy because of the money, because then it would undercut the whole arbitration system. But my personal feeling is, and this is, going back to my sunscreen from today is getting my eyes a little, they set him up. You see, they lowballed him in negotiations. So when it came to that last minute or two before you had to exchange figures, they didn't offer him 6.5 million. They were below that. So they forced him to go to arbitration, and they wanted that to happen. So when they went to arbitration, that's when they offered 6.5, which he said he would have taken. But the Giants have a position that once we exchange figures, we don't negotiate anymore. So they knew that case was going to go to arbitration, and they probably knew that they could lose. And if they did lose, they still had the leverage over him. If they did get Chapman, that they could get rid of him within 45 days of opening day and only pay a sixth of his salary, whatever it turned out to be. So I thought it was not cool, as the judge will say, bad faith. They didn't handle it properly. They handle it within the rules, but they may get hit on this, the ability to play, and you can't release a guy just for money. That could end up costing him. So he's getting 1.1 million from the Giants. He's going to sign somewhere. So whatever the difference is from the 1.1 to 6.9, that's going to be the amount of damages. So as close as he gets to 6.9 in total contract, that's what we'll see. So I'm hoping he gets 5 million from a team, and he has an insignificant loss, so to speak. But they set him up. That's my legal opinion. He got set up on this thing. They knew what they were doing. And it's not cool. You don't do this to players, especially players you like. yes, it's within the rules, but it's not cool, as we used to say.
I agree with you. Thank you. The second question, we talk a lot in our meetings, like in the after sessions, about the Giants ownership group. And we know Greg Johnson is in charge of baseball and in charge of Farhan, but it seems like Larry Baer is making a reappearance in terms of being the spokesperson for the Giants. And so we wonder where the balance really is right now between Greg Johnson, Larry Baer, and Buster Posey in terms of the influence he has.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is cosmetic for Buster Posey. He's on the executive council, but Greg, takes advice from a lot of people. Larry is part of that group that gives advice, but I think Greg really probably has the say in it. And I'd say he's the one you have to look to for change. He's the one who extended Farhan. He's the one who makes comments, we just want to break even and all that kind of stuff. No one else really is a spokesperson for the organization on financial matters like he is. It's great that Buster is there. Buster at least can give a different perspective on baseball, but I don't know what sort of influence he's got. And Larry Baer still has tremendous influence, but not like he had before when it was Larry and Bill Newcomb or Peter McGowan, that they work together closely. I don't know if Larry works that closely with Greg Johnson where he can dictate policy.
Well, thank you very much, Marty.
Thank you, Norm. Howard Manis, you're up.
Hi, Marty. Nice to meet you tonight.
Yes.
Unlike you, I'm a former Giant fan who was actually born in Manhattan. I was born in Polyclinic Hospital, West 50th Street and 8th Avenue, right across the street from the old Madison Square Garden. And that's why my parents insisted I became a big sports fan. And so I'm from Manhattan and I was a Giant fan, but in San Francisco, because I was born in 53. So I'm a little bit too young to remember the New York Giants. Only I do remember that my brother, who's 4 years older, was a big Giant fan back in the New York days, but I was strictly San Francisco. I will admit that I'm not big into baseball spring training. I live in Jersey, the New York market, and there's too much going on between, the Rangers and Knicks and college basketball now, the NCAAs. So I don't follow spring training for my own team, the Mets now. I root for the Mets, and I certainly don't really follow the Giants during spring training. But I did notice a clip the other day. I think it was, I saw it on the internet, that Bob Melvin decreed that the Giants have to stand up for the national anthem. Now, I'm not going to get this political. I'm not going to tell you my feelings about it. I work in a school. Well, I retired from working in the school, and kids didn't have to stand, but they had to be respectful. Now, San Francisco has always been a very liberal place. You go to San Francisco and wear a flower in the hair, as the old song goes. What is the feeling among, if there has been any reaction by the people in San Francisco? You're the market that Kopanek was in when he kneeled during the football game. And to hear that Bob Melvin and liberal San Francisco is actually ordering the players to stand. He's not giving them an option, at least that's the way I read it. What is the general feeling, based on your knowledge of the Giants in spring training, how the market and the media and the fans are reacting to that?
Yeah, good question. They want to accept Bob Melvin. He played for the Giants. He grew up in Menlo Park, suburb of San Francisco. He's been a manager of the A's. He's so well known. This is his dream job. He almost can do no wrong right now because he's so different than Gabe Kapler that we're just thrilled that he's here. His big issue is one word: accountability. And it's accountability of a player on the field, that if he makes a mistake, Bob Melvin tells you right there. He doesn't, undercut the media or anything else. He goes right to the player and deals with the player right there. So accountability is huge for him. Part of the accountability, two things happen. One, he wants everybody in the same locker room. Last year, they had so many people in spring training, they had the locker room in their new facility, and then they had the old locker room, which was part of the ballpark. So they had half the team in like the junior varsity locker room. He doesn't like that. He wants everybody in one locker room. As a corollary to that, he wants everybody on the line together as a team. He's promoting teamwork to stand there for the national anthem. So it's not an option. It's not a political statement. It's a teammate, teamwork statement. Now, the San Francisco question is interesting because they just had an election in San Francisco. And if you talk to people in San Francisco, and I'm not there now, and I'll be there April 3rd, San Francisco is turned a little bit more to the middle in their politics. So I think it's going to be okay. I think honestly that people want to embrace Bob Melvin. They want to embrace the team. They want to embrace togetherness, and they want to embrace something that looks right. And I think that's what he's achieving. And I think it's going to be okay.
Okay, well, I would hope he would get off to a good start. And again, being 3,000 miles away, like
Yeah.
Gary,
You look at
I
the
really
schedule?
don't know what's going on in terms of, I know the city is more, I hate to say conservative, but more towards the middle. My daughter lives in Los Altos, California. And we're going out there at the end of April, actually. My wife's a CPA, so as soon as tax season's over, we're heading out to visit my daughter and my granddaughter. So we'll be out in the area. So, but I really don't know San Francisco like I used to study it when I rooted actively for the Giants. And by the way, before I close, if anybody's interested in what's going on in New York baseball, Darryl Strawberry had a heart attack the other day. I don't know if people on the Zoom here know that. Also, Cole is probably going to be out for the Yankees until June now. They're worried about Judge is hurt again. So that's the big offseason or the spring training baseball news. But otherwise, I'm into the other sports now. But thanks for your presentation. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Howard.
You got
Mr.
Rodell,
O'Doul,
not
you're
bad.
up.
All right.
Mr. O'Doul, you're up.
I got to unmute there. Marty, good to see you again. I'll see you on
All
the
right,
4th
Tom.
of April.
I'll be there at Mardi Gras.
Mardi
April
Gras,
4th,
Mardi
and I'll
Gras,
be
we'll be there.
The public house, April 6th.
Well, yeah, opening day, yes. But I'm talking about Mardi Gras. I'll see you there.
April 4th.
Just a quick note to everybody. I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but Lefty O'Doul has been inducted into the Irish American Baseball Hall of Fame. So we're really happy for that. And we're looking forward to having a little celebration at Oracle Park, perhaps in May on Irish Heritage Night. So plan on getting Lefty into the Hall of Fame. Now we just had to work on Cooperstown. That's the only one he's not in yet. So I don't know, Marty. It's good to see you, and take care. I'll see you on the 4th.
Yep, see you there, and I'll see you Saturday at the public house on the 6th.
I'll be there.
Nice seeing you, Tom. Richard, you are up.
Gary, am I online?
Yes, you are. Richard, you're up. Richard T.
Okay, Marty, great to meet you. It sounds as if there's ever a sequel to It's a Wonderful Life, you could be in it.
Hey, they're making a documentary about me. Where do you see this? All right.
I have two unrelated questions. You mentioned baseball cards a couple of times. Do you have a collection? And though it preceded your radio days, where were you the night of the earthquake game?
Yeah, first of all, I'll show you that. Can you see that?
Yes.
Sal
You know
Magley.
who that is?
Magley.
Thank you. Yeah, I keep this on my desk. I look at it when I do the shows here. So yes, I have baseball cards. I like them. And the other one I keep close by is that one.
Branca.
Yes, Ralph Branca. All right. So that's it. Yes, I do keep that. What was your second question? Tell me. again.
Where were you the night of
Oh,
the earthquake game?
I was there. Yeah, I was there. You know, in those days, I was still the criminal lawyer, and I had worked for the ball club doing the hero notes. So I knew Jack Schwartz, who was the traveling secretary, and I ended up getting, I don't know, 12 tickets, to the World Series, and gave them out at the Hall of Justice and to different people and all that. So I was there that night, sitting behind, I guess I was probably in the lower level behind the dugout. And of course, things shook. It felt like a train going through the ballpark, and the lights shook and everything else. And it was pretty crazy. It took most of the night to get home because I lived in Berkeley in those days. And to get from Candlestick to Berkeley without the Bay Bridge was not easy. So it was one of the crazier nights of my life.
Thank you, Richard. Howard, Harvey, you're up.
Marty, I have one suggestion when you give your resume and your extensive background. Change the title criminal lawyer to criminal defense attorney.
Yeah, and I don't say murder anymore. I say homicide.
There you go. But criminal lawyer, those of us who engage in that dark art, sounds like somebody's coming to lock us up. You know what I mean?
With you, criminal defense lawyer.
I was born in Brooklyn, raised in the Bronx, and naturally became a Giants fan. I was born about 6 months before you, if I heard you correctly. Saw my first game July 10th, 1954. I was just shy of 9 years old. Saw Willie Mays make a great catch, steal home, although the official box score has him scoring on a error by the pitcher. I only tell you that to tell you one other story. Did you ever meet Bobby Thompson?
Yes, yes, I did. Wonderful man.
I had a wonderful guy. I had the good fortune, and the only quick story I'll tell you, I don't want to, because I've told this story many times, and I can see everybody starting to fall asleep. They know what I'm going to say. When I first met Bobby in 1996, it was at a dinner on Staten Island, of course. And my dear wife, who's since died, had to tell Bobby that she grew up a Dodgers fan. Had to tell him that. And Bobby looked at her and said, "That's okay, dear. My father was a Dodgers fan." And then he turned to me and he said, "Until I signed with the Giants."
Yeah, he wanted to be a Dodger. The Dodgers wouldn't sign him.
That's one of the other reasons I don't like the Dodgers. But anyway, Marty, I did happen to listen to you on, I'm not certain whether it was satellite or whatnot. I'm pretty sure it was last season. It was a rain delay. Yeah. How do you keep your patience with some of us crazy fans who call you up and want to vent?
Well, it's like the ring. Why do I have the ring? I have it for the fans, really. And that's why I do the shows. The shows are done for you. And I want to hear your opinion. Everybody has a story. Everybody has passion. We are the ones, I include myself in there, that make baseball happen. And if you have a story or if you have something to say, I want to hear it. And if you go on for 3 minutes on the radio, that's a long time. I have to jump in at some point. But I like to let people talk, and I like to let them say what they have to say, and then make them feel appreciative, and then I move on. But I do all this for the fans. It's not for me. I can ask questions. It's a lawyer business. I can ask an open-ended question. It's not about my question. It's about what you say. And that's my job, is to bring it out of you. So I relate to the fans. Today at the ballpark, sitting there today behind home plate, half a dozen people came up to me. I listen to you all the time. And, I don't know who they are. And they just said nice things, but it's clear we've made a connection. And that's my job, I feel, in doing this, is to make the connection with the fans.
You're terrific. Thanks for coming on. Hope you can come back again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Harvey, thank you. Alec, you are up.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for being here. I guess on the J.D. Davis point, I guess I have 2 points I wanted to make. One was, I think his agent should have, it was described as this unexpected loophole in the CBA, but I feel like his representative should have known that that was a possibility, that it was going to happen. And the second thing is, I think that the Giants, signed Chapman in contemplation of being able to save the money through this maneuver, which I agree was not cool, by the way. But in terms of, fans want the new player and they want to pay the old player. And I think the question would be,
let me ask you, if the last offer was, let's say, 5.5 million, which is a tremendous amount of money, God, if we saw that kind of money, it would change our lives. But 5.5, and they anticipated 6.9 was the market. They left them no choice but to arbitrate. See, now, if they would have negotiated more than 10 minutes before the exchange of numbers, then I could fault the agent, say, look, the agent could have got 6.3, you want a 6.9, Chapman's in the mix. You better be careful here, because if they get Chapman and, you win the hearing, they could get rid of you. But I think, one, he didn't think of that, and I agree with your point. I think the agent did not consider that. But two, I think the numbers were so far apart that they had no choice but to arbitrate.
Well, noted. I guess the question is, what do other baseball players think of the agent? Like, is that helpful for, did the other players think that guy, did he get played by the Giants? Or, I mean, as you say, he may go to court or what have you, but, it's not, we hope he lands. Look, I'm in Seattle. I hope he lands in Seattle, right? And I hope he gets paid. So
That's the
it
place.
makes sense.
Seattle's a
See.
possibility they need a third baseman. But as they say in court, I can't speculate on the state of mind of others.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. Frank Lewis.
Thank you for the presentation, Marty. Am I correct that Tony La Russa was admitted to the bar in Florida?
Yes, I just saw him yesterday.
Did he ever have a legal career?
I'm sorry?
Did he ever have a legal career?
No, but I just saw him. He's had a tough time medically. And I just saw him when the White Sox played the Giants a couple of days ago. He was just here.
So what happened? Well, he was admitted to the bar, but he never had never did any legal work.
No, he never practiced, but I did commend him on Sunday. I said, Tony, you were a very good manager, and a lot of it was because you were a lawyer. You were so well organized. And, we did commiserate about that a little bit, but no, he never practiced.
Miller Huggins, the Babe Ruth's manager, I believe, was a lawyer too. And are there any other lawyer ball players?
Was that?
Are there any other lawyer ball players?
Lawyer ball players. I don't know. Offhand, I don't know of any. Muddy Rule, if you remember him, the old catcher, and he was a lawyer as well. Branch Rickey was a lawyer. There have been people in baseball, obviously. Joe Garagiola Jr. is a lawyer.
Mo Berg.
That's right. Yes, Bill Berg. Correct. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Frank. Paul, you're up.
Marty, thank you so much. I have really, I have a compliment. I can tell when I don't know you and I've never met you. And in being raised on the East Coast, I didn't know your connection with the Giants before tonight. But I have to say, your ability to listen and your ability to respond to people's comments, I think, is really a gift. So I want to say thank you for that. My question really has to do with upper management. Being a fan of both the Red Sox and the Giants, I feel like I'm looking at two of the same types of teams. We have an owner that's no longer committed to wanting to see his team to be that successful in terms of spending money to put the ball players on the field that are necessary in order to win. And also a general manager who's forced as a result to kind of operate and try to deal with either reclamation projects or finding new talent that's somehow going to pull the team together. I wondered if you could respond to that.
Yeah, revenue is down. Now, the Giants and the Red Sox don't have the issue because they have Nesson and the Giants have Comcast, NBC Sports Bay Area. So they still get all their revenue. But in baseball, the TV money has changed dramatically now, and that's affected the sport itself. And it's probably affected even the big market teams to some degree because the revenue in the game has gone down a little bit. And there's also still the influence of the analytical part. They're still drawing a line in the sand of saying, well, 5 years at age 30, what are we going to get at when he's 34 and 35? Do we really want to just throw money away like we had done in the past? And we're still going through that. And it's still a stage of settling in and seeing where that goes. If you're a ball player who's 31, you don't necessarily want to get on free agency and look for the 7-year deal. Like Jordan Montgomery, he's looking for a 7-year deal. He's not going to get a 7-year deal.
Right. Yeah, you won't.
Because they're just not going to pay that kind of money anymore. So I think the Giants and Red Sox are a good comparison.
Okay.
Attendance is down. Revenue is down for the Giants, believe it or not. They do have a lot of property, for the stadium and the attendance, you have to share that money with the league. But for renting buildings and all the construction they've done, that's their money. But because of the real estate market in San Francisco, real estate is not renting as quickly as it did before COVID. San Francisco has not bounced back, especially. So I think, as crazy as it sounds, I think Giants revenue is being challenged a little bit.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Marty. Terrific.
you,
Nice
Paul.
meeting you.
Thank you.
Ted, go ahead, Ted.
Actually, it's Joanne. So
Okay,
first,
Joanne, go answer your question.
thank you. I want to thank Marty for the heartfelt story because honestly, it really rang a lot in my core because I was born in Polyclinic Hospital on the West Side, grew up in Hell's Kitchen, and the streets in New York were our playground. Your story sharing about playing stickball and whatever. I mean, we were 8 kids and that's where we grew up. What I'd like to ask you is, how do you see the kids nowadays? Where are they going to connect and how are they going to be able to do these things? Getting to the games are impossible because they're prohibitive, the cost of it. How do you see the connection now to reach out to the young ones?
Well, unfortunately, it's through streaming and the internet and TikTok and Instagram and all those kinds of platforms that young people use. So as parents and people with nephews, nieces, children, grandchildren, what have you, it's our obligation a little bit to take them to a game and expose them to the beauty of baseball and the continuity of baseball and how it is generational, just like a family. And I think we do that. We still communicate with our children that way, and they still see us having fun, loving the game and the story, the 6 months, every day you get another story. It's a soap opera and all that. But the connection to the player is now through something that we have to deal with, and that's part of politics. It's part of our everyday life. You can have something happen in 10 seconds in New York, and in 10 seconds later in Tokyo, they're commenting about it. So this is what we deal with now, and that's the way baseball has got to connect with the young people, and they're trying to do it. They know that. They're trying to get more streaming platforms and everything else. And that's part of what the polarization is for people like us and the way baseball is trying to market itself. But it's trying to be global, and it's trying to get to as many kids on the younger level. We'll sit and watch a game for 2 hours and 20 minutes, but a kid who's 12 is not going to sit there and keep score and wonder, is Don Mueller going to get a hit? Or is Alvin Dark coming up in the 8th inning? Those days are over. So you have to connect with the kids on their level, and baseball's trying to do that.
Thank you,
Okay,
Joanne.
thank you.
Steve, go ahead.
Gary, I always say this, kudos to you. This was really, I didn't know Marty's history, but Marty, you know what? That line that you use, you can use it for the rest of your life. The kid from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And boy, did you bring back memories, the games, King and Queens. I haven't heard that one in 100 years. But you guys played stoop ball in Brooklyn.
Throw the Spalding and hit the penny.
That's correct. That's another one. You guys played stoop ball in Brooklyn.
Spalding to my right. I've got it. I've got the Spalding.
You have a pinky or whatever that other one was called?
I'm going to get it. Don't go anywhere.
All right.
This is amazing.
Christina, you okay? You need tissues?
No, it's the game, the things that he mentioned. Those
Christina's
games,
dad was mentioned.
every one of them. Oh my, that was like 27 cents. The other one was 25, something like that.
I'm okay.
When I went down the sewer, I wanted to kill myself.
Oh, that was huge, the sewers. But you mentioned stoop ball in Upper Manhattan. We called it curb ball.
Okay.
Same idea.
Stoop ball, you want to hit the point.
I would love to sit with you for hours. Have you named the 53 Cubs? Me named the 57 Pirates, and go back and forth. My question is not related to what you said. I'm just curious. In all these years, you've met so many people. Did you ever cross paths, and he's no longer living, may rest in peace, Ed Lucas?
No.
Do you know the name?
No.
The blind journalist? There's a great book called Seeing Home. I'm not going to go through the whole story, obviously. We've had him Gary had him on a Zoom call. He was blinded for life the day that Bobby Thompson hit the home run as a little boy, and he became a journalist. He was at every Yankee opening game from 1956, probably till 2000. Divorced, custody of his kids. First time in New Jersey that a a male and a handicapped male who was blind. Anyway, check out that book, Seeing Home. You can add it to your repertoire. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Anybody have a question who hasn't asked one before we wrap it up?
Hey, Marty. I was just wondering, in your during your legal career or after, did you ever meet Melvin Belli?
I saw him. I can't say that I ever said anything to him, but I saw him in the courthouse. I certainly did. He was very flamboyant.
Yeah, he was that right famous guy, but I'd heard that maybe I've got this wrong. He was either Ty Cobb's or Ty Cobb's wife's lawyer.
Could be. Now, you were reading the sporting news a few weeks ago. Did you ever learn about Coogan's widow from Coogan's Bluff?
Oh, I heard.
Did you ever know about her?
No.
He died, Coogan died. Of course, that's how the Polo Grounds was put together in Coogan's Bluff. Well, Coogan's wife was a recluse, and she was lived in a hotel because her daughter was snubbed as a debutante in Newport Beach in a coming out party. They snubbed her, and the woman, Mrs. Coogan, spent the rest of her life living in a hotel. No one ever saw her. They would bring the meals to the room and all that stuff. And that's who Horace Stoneham had to deal with for the lease for the Polo Grounds. And she was the widow of Coogan from Coogan's Bluff. And eventually, I guess Horace must have bought the Polo Grounds from the estate. And then he had the income that came from the Polo Grounds. And when the income fell apart, that's part of the reason the Giants left in 58. But I just saw this little tidbit about her, and I never knew that she was, look her up, Mrs. Coogan. She was a nut.
Thank you.
Great, man. Thank you so much. I remember the stories of Wade Hoyt, and they talked about how he could talk baseball. I think Wade Hoyt has found his match.
There's a good book out about Wade Hoyt. It just came out. Yeah, Tim Manners.
It's terrific. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. Christina, did you want to quickly say something?
I did.
Go ahead.
I just want to say Marty is just a treasure. Listen to him pre and post since he started with the Giants. He's just a treasure. The Giants are lucky to have him. He's a wonderful person to listen to. Whether the Giants are winning or losing, he's like comfort and soothing and has great, wonderful stories. And my dad passed away the year before he was with the Giants, which was too bad because my dad would have loved the stories that he told. And he's amazing. And I hope he stays for a long time because he really makes baseball season wonderful. So thanks, Marty.
Thank you. Your dad had a big home run in 1947. Wasn't it the tiebreaker or the one
It
that
was a tiebreaker. Yep. And he had a ring that they all got, a home run ring, and my brother got it. But yeah, he had a ring from that.
Yeah, he hit the home run that broke the record.
Yeah, he did.
Lucky Larky.
Marty, we
Thanks-
cannot,
thanks,
let's give it
Marty.
give it up for Marty Lurie.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you so much.
Stickball. We're going to play stickball again.
Marty, listen, don't be a stranger on here. We love.
Come on.
Okay.
Glad to do it. Really glad to do it. Anytime, just let me know.
Sounds great. All right, guys,
Thanks,
we're gonna wrap it
Marty.
up. We will see each other next Thursday with Charlie Vassalero. I'll hang around with the room open if anybody wants to further talk Giant baseball. But Marty, again, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good. Thank you, Gary. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Marty. Listen to you on
Thank you.
Saturday. Thanks.
Keep in touch. Keep in touch. Thank you.